So once again, welcome to today's webinar. Today we'll be looking at the employee subscreen and payroll. Employees and subs, employees and installers. Some of them are subcontractors, some are employees. Just like all the other QFloors screens, they're listed on the left, and the detail of each one is on the right. And you create a new employee or installer by clicking the New button and filling in the blanks. And it's pretty straightforward. Just make sure you're pressing the Enter key after typing in the information. If it's a business name, like with an installer, skip the first name, put the business name under the last name. So if we have and fill in their address, enter, just fill in the blanks, social security number or their federal tax ID number, email address. Remember, email address, you need that in there if you're using QReporter, and it can be each individual's, of course, each individual's specific email address. This type field is pretty important here. This does not define the person's position in the company. It defines or tells the software where to display the name. Sales type will show up on the invoices screen in the list of salespeople. Installer type will show up on the invoice screen in the list of installers. Sales, office, and management all show up in this area here to receive a customer payment. Those types don't give the person any additional access rights in the software. It's really just where are we going to display the name, certain reports, sales commissions, paying your installers, where are we going to use the name. I'll come back to this table field here. Another important part of setting up an employee or an installer is this option here, are they an employee or are they a contractor? So you can have an installer who is either an employee or a contractor. That's fairly common. Comments, just any general comment you might want to put in here, since we don't have a field for it. What was their start date? What was their end date? Any notes there? Use payroll laws for, if you are using the QFloors payroll, then you definitely need to select an option here. Notice that if I select certain states, here we are in Utah here, press enter. Nothing changes down here, but certain other states, Pennsylvania, California, you get a handful of additional payroll items that are required for that state. So make sure you select your state and press enter. Pay period, monthly, weekly, semi-monthly, select the appropriate option. Filing status, so you need it to have on hand your W-4 form from the employee or a W-9 from the installer to get their tax ID number, and for the employees their number of allowances. Keep in mind also that there are state allowances. Most states, as I understand it, require that you set this up the same as the federal, but some states allow it to be different. So you'll need to know, maybe talk with your accountant. What do we put here? There might be a form. So double click state, get those set up. So that's the basics. Really pretty straightforward setting up an employee. We'll save that one. Now setting up an installer is really just the same. Address and so forth, tax ID number. Remember this, if it's operating as a business, if he or she is operating as a business, company name here, business name, and the business ID number. That's why you need that W-9 form, IRS form W-9. so they can report to you or provide to you, here's the name and tax ID number I'm operating under. Again, installer. And when you have installer selected and contractor selected, and you select a state, watch when I press enter what happens down here. It's going to exempt the withholdings automatically. It takes that combination of those three options. And then it doesn't matter if you put monthly, weekly, it doesn't matter what you do here. QFloors will ignore that. Okay. We do have this box down here, YTD year, year-to-date year. For each payroll item, if you are new to QFloors, if you're setting up QFloors for the first time, you need to enter into each of these items. How much have I paid or withheld from the person's pay for their gross salaries and wages, or whatever account you choose to set up here? You can change the account here. Yeah, prior to starting QFloors. So you set this up, how much have we paid or withheld from them prior to using QFloors? That's what Kevin's making sure I say here. Thanks. Before we start using QFloors payroll, I've paid them some amount this year already. Well, that amount applies to that year. So if you're new at the system, it would say 2013, and really it'd be a very rare situation where you would change that. You would always leave that at the year that you started, because that year goes with that amount and vice versa. And so when you print your first paycheck from QFloors, if you have that set up, then it'll show year to date $18,000 plus whatever you paid them on the current paycheck. So each one of those has a year to date. Federal, you can do an additional withholding amount. By the way, QFloors rounds the federal withholding. There's not an option to turn that off. So when you are doing QFloors payroll, it might not come out down to the penny exactly what the person was getting paid before. On that note, I should have mentioned first off, make sure you have already installed at your server computer the most recent payroll withholding tables. That's just a download from our website. Should have happened when QFloors got installed. It is in the installation instructions. You can check that by clicking Help, About QFloors. You can do this at any computer. Help, excuse me, About QFloors, payroll version. Today, this is August 8th, 2013. This is, as of today, that is the most recent payroll version. Yeah, thanks. Kevin's pointing out, make sure that you download that every year. Usually in December, early January, we'll be releasing the latest payroll tables. The past few years, it's been a mess with the IRS and Congress not being decisive early enough on changes that are going to happen with payroll or not to change things. And so we've had to kind of play catch up with the laws that passed or didn't pass or didn't change, and give you payroll withholding tables late, and then tell you how to fix previous payroll payroll that you may have already done that year. But you should see payroll tables available late December, early January. You may need to add additional payroll items, either for an employee or an installer. That's clicking this Add button over here on the right. You are going to need an account, one of your general ledger accounts. You cannot use the same account on multiple payroll items. Each of these needs to have a separate account. Now you can, from one employee to the next, use the same account, but within one employee setup, if you have salaries and wages here, you cannot create another item and use salaries and wages here, QFloors will warn you. It'll say, sorry, you can't do that. Got to have a separate account on each one. So set up your account first under Setup, Chart of Accounts. Maybe we have click the New button. Something like that. Bonus pay, health insurance deduction, things like that. So we click the Add button. Item name is how we want it labeled on their paycheck when the check stub prints out. Item amount is how much am I going to pay them or deduct from their pay with this item this time, this paycheck. A positive amount is a deduction. This item window is assumed to be a deduction. You just type it in, it will deduct it from their pay. If we're adding to their pay, negative amount. Fixed amount, percentage of gross, percentage of net, something like AFLAC. Certain AFLAC deductions are a percentage of the gross, some are a percentage of the net. Talk with your accountant, with the plan administrator, so you know for sure, and I mean absolutely for sure, is it percentage of gross or net. And select your account here. Again, you have your year-to-date, old system. I'll talk about annual maximum in a minute. Add to or deduct this amount from the gross or to the gross before calculating certain taxes. So this is in addition to pay. Do I need this added to the pay before calculating any taxes? Yes, this is a bonus. The IRS says everything's income unless we say it isn't income. Bonus is income. So yes, I need that taxed. I need federal withholding withheld. I need Social Security and Medicare withheld, state and local, if there were any local. Again, with something like AFLAC, make absolutely sure that you know if this should be added to their pay, if it's in addition, or deducted from their pay before calculating taxes. If you have to go back later and fix payroll where you had something set up incorrectly and you did some paychecks, it's not extremely difficult to fix, but it's very time consuming and a little bit tedious. You've got to void every check and void the bill, and then make sure you've got it set up in here, and then recreate bill by bill, check by check, making sure you use the same original amounts as far as original gross amounts and original dates. The reason we don't let you edit the payroll is so that the QFloors payroll that it does maintains its integrity. We've had a few people that say they just want to edit it, like in certain software programs let you do that, and then it lost its integrity. Did the user do this and do it wrong, or did the software do it wrong? And we'll click OK. This item is not a local tax, so I'm not going to check it. If this were some sort of local tax that I needed to add in, click the box. The exempt box on any item just says don't add this or deduct this from the pay this time. You can leave it exempt forever or uncheck it as you need it, exempt it as you don't need it, week by week, paycheck by paycheck. And there we've added an item. Let's come back and talk about that annual maximum. I'm going to double click bonus, or you can click it once and click edit, either way. Double click annual maximum. Some of you will need to set up something, say with an installer, you're holding out a retainer. Let's go to an installer and set one up. Let's do chart of accounts, and we'll do and this is a we'll make that long term actually, because probably won't owe it back to him for a while. So retainer, I'm holding out some amount out of his pay in a retainer account in case there are problems, and when there is a problem with one of his jobs, I can use those funds that I've held back from him to go fix the problem. You could just send him out and say, go fix it at your own expense. It's up to you how you handle that, of course, but some people will do this retainer. So we click the Add button, and some amount. Those are usually done as a percentage, say 2%. And I would do a separate retainer account for each person. Year-to-date old system. I do not want to affect his 1099 reportable earnings with this. I'm taking it out of his pay, yes, but I need to report to the IRS on the 1099 the gross labor earnings for the year. So I'm not going to check this. Checking the federal for a contractor installer will affect what gets reported on the 1099. So annual maximum. that is annual. Putting a dollar amount in here would say I want to hold out 2% of his pay until I've got $2,000 withheld this year annually, the current calendar year. Some people might expect, and it makes sense that you would, that the paycheck stub, or not really paycheck, but the check stub for paying this installer would show the account balance for the retainer. That's not the intent behind this. This is to show how much do I want to add to or deduct from his pay up to this amount. And then when you pay them, it'll hold out 2% until you've reached 2,000, and then in the following year it's going to start over and do the same thing. So this right now does not function on doing an account maximum, holding out 2% until that account has $2,000 in it. That's not what this will do. Okay. Access rights for employees. Click the access button. Username and password are down here. That's the easy part. And click OK. We have these buttons over here on the left. Clicking one will give them access to more and more access to certain things. You can always modify it from there. Click the button, it checks off certain things, and then you can check or uncheck other things. To customize that, if you click the button again, it will go back to the default settings for that button. We are still working on producing on our website a list of what each of these means. I'm going to talk about them right now to explain what they each mean. Location change. If you have multiple locations set up, is this employee allowed to switch between locations to either create new invoices or sales, or at least look at those sales in the other location? So it depends on how you have your locations set up. Do they even need to be in there? Quick view window, that's this purple bar across the bottom here that shows company financial numbers. Most people probably don't need to see that, just a few management and owners. Import data, does this person have access to be able to do B2B importing and also spreadsheet file imports of certain data? General reporting. You know what, I'm going to refer to a partial list that we have here because I don't remember exactly what that one means. Should have had this up already. I apologize. Somebody point that out to me. Where am I missing it here? DC, Kevin? I was just looking at it earlier. Oh, there it is. Scroll down a little bit, see everything. I'm okay. Don't worry. I'll be all right. Oh, I still got it open over there. Okay. General reporting allows access to these reports: contract labor, sales commissions, and sales tax. Say again. That's 6.1. Kevin's mentioning a report that's in version 6.1. I'm in 6.0 because we haven't fully released 6.1 yet. Okay, going on. General setup. Let's come back to our document here. Company information, locations and tax, miscellaneous, chart of accounts, and sales commissions. Those are the setup options that a person would have access to if you click that box. Customer accounts. That should say customer accounts setup. Product catalog setup. Vendor accounts. Okay, journal section. Does the person have the ability to get into the general journal entry window? Very few people should have access to that. Accounting reports. So let's see which reports. This is the part that I don't remember which report options give you access to which reports. So here we are, accounting reports. Those reports: accounts receivable aging, accounts payable aging, profit loss, balance sheet, general ledger, trial balance, accounting type reports. And those, of course, are found under your reports menu. Entry modify. So if I have access to view the general journal entry window, can I create and modify journal entries? GL closing. Can I close the general ledger? File, close period. Very, very few people should have access to that. Very few people should have access to anything in the journal section overall. Dashboard. View other employees' tasks. So you can create tasks. I'm just going to throw this in. Control T on your keyboard. Okay, version 6.0 didn't have that. Dashboard, new task. In version 6.1 you can do Control T or Control M. Can I view other employees' tasks? Can I switch names here and see someone else's list of their tasks? That's what that means. Can I edit other employees' tasks? Can I delete a contact in the dashboard? Dashboard, look up, find some contact, and delete them. Export contacts. File, export, contacts. Okay, the lead section. Can I view the lead screen at all? Can I view other employees' leads? Sales manager. This one I'm not real sure on. Kevin, do you remember? Sales manager. In the lead setup, do I have access to the lead setup? Can I edit the up manager? Anyone can get into it, but to edit it, the manager can log anyone in or out and can change the rank. We did discuss that. I did go over that in the leads screen training, the webinar. So watch the webinar on leads, and I talk about that. This looks like I've just made some notes. I don't have it typed out real plainly here. Those are just my notes after a discussion with one of the programmers. But that's the sales manager can get into the lead setup window and manage things in the Up Manager under the Edit menu here. Up Manager. It can check someone in, double click to check someone else in who's not yourself, or check them out of the Up Manager and change the rank. Say this one should be first in line for the next up. Okay, invoice section. Can I view the invoice screen at all? Can I create or modify invoices? Can I view other employees' invoices? View report totals. That means this yellow box at the bottom of the list. Can I view that? Let me make sure there's nothing else in there. Okay, I don't have a description typed in on that one. The next one is management reports. View the profit margin in the invoices list. So that's, will this column be populated for me? View the following lists: completed, gross profit, in process with balance, receivables, and statements. So down in this status field you have various reports or invoice lists. Can I view the in-process lists, statements, receivables? There is also a tab at the top for receivables. Modify after day and modify after month. Excuse me, if I've created a sale, I'm an employee, and I do not have access to modify after day, then when I create an invoice today and I come in tomorrow and the customer calls and says, I don't want to go with the Stony Brook color, I want to go with the orange carpet, and I can't modify it. I have to go to someone in management who does have access to modify invoices the day after it's created. That's modify after day. Modify after month means if I created this on July 31st, then August 1st comes, I can't modify it anymore. I've got to go to someone in management who does have the ability to change an invoice in the month following the month that it was created. And that's calendar days, not just counting out 30 days. Job costing modify. Oh, thanks. Kevin's pointing out that if it's a proposal invoice and you don't have access to modify after day or modify after month, you can still modify those. But once it's changed to an order or ready order status, taken out of proposal status and saved, that person cannot change it anymore based on their modify after day, modify after month access rights. Job costing modify, can this person right click and change a job cost? Remember from the basic training seminar, you really should not be right-clicking a product cost. That's a big no-no in the software. It allows you to because there will be some rare situations when you might, but in general, don't right-click a product cost. If you don't have access rights to modify costs, then you won't be able to on either one of those. You'll get a pop-up message saying you can't. In general, we would say most salespeople should not be allowed to modify job costs. Not that they are incapable or anything like that. It's just that you want to protect your costs. Yep. Yeah, Kevin's making sure we point out that if if you're creating an invoice and you type in a style that's not in the system yet, we'll do that. You'll get a zero cost. Do you want your salesperson to be able to right-click and plug one in there? Well, in general, we say don't modify a product cost, but in a situation like this, especially if it's just a proposal, you might, as a salesperson, I would want to be able to so that I can see my profit margin. Right now, the profit margin is not really correct because I don't have one of my costs. So it's kind of pros and cons there. In general, we say, you know, most people, salespeople shouldn't be allowed to, but you might need to. Another one would be if they've worked out a deal with an installer, they've called an installer, I'm doing a large job, and work out a deal where the installer will charge you a little bit less for doing this large volume job. You might want to right click and plug in your labor cost.
Using the POs correctly, and you do the bills and attach POs, I change that, always catch up correctly.
Oh yeah, just pointing out, Kevin's pointing out that if a salesperson or whoever has access rights does right click on this this line here, and you right click here and change it, and then we actually get the sale, we save it, we take a payment, and we go through the product management process to create the product and assign its actual cost to it. And then when you get the bill comes in the mail, the vendor's invoice, and that verifies or corrects the cost of that product, that carries back over to here and updates it to be the actual correct cost anyway if someone did modify it to start with when it was still in proposal or early stages. Reminding you also that when you see a product cost, it's in this bluish turquoise tint here. Whether you have access rights to change, to modify job cost or not, software won't let you. That means the cost has been verified by entering the vendor's invoice in the system. Let's get out of those changes. Okay, so that's modified job cost. Again, our recommendation is few people should have access to do that, but there are some pros and cons on allowing salespeople to do it. You might need to, and for the most part, you'll probably be okay. Job costing view, that just means can we even open that job cost window in the first place? Job costing finalize. That one for sure, very few people should have access to. It's not quite as a controlled area as your journal, but job costing finalize means that I have the ability to click and check it off to say yes, that's been installed. I have the installer's bill in my hand, and that product has been installed. Or if it's cash and carry, they've taken it or we delivered it to them. And yes, I want to pay the installer that dollar amount. And that delivers that line, and doing all of the job costing changes it to a completed status, and that's when the accounting entry happens. Job costing finalize along with modify means that you can also change the commission. So if I'm a salesperson and you pay commissions, you probably don't want to give me access to do both modify and finalize, because I could change my commission even by $1 here and there, and that adds up. So there's reasons why you don't want to have certain people doing finalize. Perhaps modify, but modify and finalize together should be pretty tightly controlled. Payment employee and payment discounts. We'll talk about those together. So on an invoice, in the payments window, payment employee means I can change the name to indicate that someone else took this payment, received the payment from the customer. If you don't give that access right to someone, then I believe the software will let them change it, but when they click the add payment, it'll just put their name in it. It just won't even recognize the change that they tried to make. Payment discount means this. Do I get to see these two options, interest and discount here? If you don't give someone access to payment discount, then they will not see interest and discount. What do those do? If I click interest or discount, really the same thing happens. Another box opens here where you can select one of your general ledger accounts. So if this customer owed a balance and we've tried to collect, and we can't, then we're going to write off that balance to bad debt. So we're posting a payment, clearing out a balance without taking check, cash, credit card. We're putting it into one of our GL accounts. Very few people should have access to that. That's kind of like one of those journal section. I don't know. Kevin's mentioning delete payment. Which one gives access to that? That's right. Entry, modify, and GL closing, or GL closing, one or the other or both. I think it's to be able to delete payments on the invoice, you have to have access to one or the other or both of those. I'm not positive. That's why we need from the programmers a list of exactly what to each of these is. You can see this is about as far as we've gotten with them on listing out everything. They're making changes to it. I'm not totally slamming Tony and Chad. We're constantly making, or right now we're making a lot of changes, or have been making a lot of changes. So we don't have a full list. So that's a good point. Deleting payments is a function of having access to journal functions. Yeah, they won't even see the button if they don't have access to that. Job cost view other. So if I have the ability to view the job cost window, but I don't have access to this, and when I open the job cost window on another employee's invoice, it will be blank. Can I view other employees' job costs? Modify bill date on the invoice screen. Do I have the ability to type in a date here to say that's when we billed the customer? Product screen. Can I view the product screen at all? Can I create products and modify them? Can I do the invoice confirmation process? Can I get into that list and do invoice confirmation? Can I get into the purchase orders list and do the ordering? So it's not just viewing the purchase orders, it's actually ordering things, doing that process. Can I receive and transfer products? Can I get into the on order list in the product screen and do the receiving process? Stock control, if someone has access to that, after a product has been ordered and received and it's in the stock list, they will be able to change cost, freight costs, quantities, things that really, as your general inventory controls, you don't want very many people to have access to. As a general business rule, we'd say that the people who have the controls physical custody, I think is the terminology. Those people who have physical custody of the inventory, basically warehouse managers and staff. In general, they should not have the ability to modify the inventory in the system because they're working with it, and out in the warehouse, things can get sent out the back door with the wrong person, maliciously or whatever, and then come and hide it in the system somehow. So that's yeah, it'd be very hard to find. You'd be losing inventory and not knowing it for a while. So, not that people are, you trust people, of course, but you set up controls to protect the business as well. So that's one of them and this is not a QFloors thing. This is just general business practice recommendations. Is the people who have physical custody of the inventory shouldn't have the ability to change any of the inventory in the system. But somebody does need to have stock control rights to modify some things on the product after it's already been received. Now, probably a rare situation because our general recommendation is don't change the cost and definitely don't change your original width and length after the product has been received. But occasionally it needs done and somebody needs to be able to do it, and that's what that access right is for. I believe that applies to location as well, stock control, being able to change the location on the product, and status. More access rights. The bill section, can I view that screen at all? Can I create and modify bills? Can I view payroll bills? So when we're going to talk about payroll later, when I've done payroll here, it creates a bill in this employee sub-tab. Can I view that tab? Those bills also show up under all bills. Here's bill number 79. So under all bills, I can see bill number 79. So if I don't have access to view the employee bills, I won't be able to get into this tab, nor will I be able to get into this tab. I can see current bills and completed bills, but not those two. Checkbook section. Can I view the checkbook screen at all? Can I create and modify deposits? Can I create and modify checks? Can I do the checkbook reconciliation? Employee screen, can I view this screen at all? Can I set up payroll? Can I modify some of these payroll options or not? Can I create an employee or installer or not? Can I even just click the new button and fill it in? Create paychecks. Can I click this button to do payroll? Another part of the employee section is this option here, define user access. Defining user access is in the employee sub-screen, so in order to get to this, I have to have this also. Again, very few people should have access to that, of course. Master Plus will give access to everything and then give them a username and password. When you type in a password, QFloors does not show what it is. If somebody forgets it, then you can just type over what they think it should be or what you want it to be. There's not a list that you can go to see everyone's passwords. As long as you have access to this area, you can come in and change passwords, take away access rights, things like that. You can make an employee inactive by unchecking this box and saving. I'm pretty sure that disables their password, but I'm not 100% on that. Yeah, so you might want to take away all access rights if you disable someone anyway, but then remove their username and password. But that you can make someone inactive, and then you can go back to the all employee subs list and activate them later. Okay, that is setting up employees and installers. Paying people. We'll talk about paying employees first, salespeople and office people and so forth. So if we have someone here and we have different items set up, I've got some generic one here. I'm going to exempt that for now. Maybe we've got some sort of legal deduction we've got to make, some sort of garnishment. Um, you can type in the pay amount here, or if they have an hourly rate, then QFloors changes that gross for you. Overtime, let's see, what's holiday pay, things that are based like time and a half or double time. You would have to set up an item. Overtime pay, you'd have to have a separate account, an expense account, overtime. And you would have to calculate the amount to pay them as a whole. We have designed kind of on paper, and we've designed changes that need to happen here to automate that. So for now, how many hours did they work at that overtime rate? What is the rate? Type in the amount. Remember to type it in as a negative amount if it's in addition to pay. So paying someone, put in their rate and hours, or if it's a salary, type that in. Double click to change any item here that needs to be changed for this particular paycheck, to exempt it or to change the amount. And if everything looks good, your net check is okay, you click this create check button. Really, this ought to be labeled create bill, because it doesn't actually create the paycheck. It doesn't print a check right away. You'll get a message, a payroll payment's been scheduled for that person in that amount. Okay. And in the checkbook screen, when you refresh, that's not the right one. Looks like I've done some others in here and haven't cleaned it out. There's the one we just did, the 304. So you might go through just employee by employee, click on them, get it set up, save it, create check, click on the next person, get it all set up, create check. And when you're done, you'll have them over in this list of bills to pay. So that implies that a bill was created. These are projected payments. Projected payments come from the bill screen in the background. When you clicked the create check button, it created this bill for you to do all the accounting with those accounts that are selected here and here. You cannot edit a payroll bill other than the account. You can change and the date. You can change the date and you can change the account, but the software won't allow you to edit anything else. Again, to maintain the integrity of the calculations that the software did. So that's the basics. That's the simple, just how to pay someone. Type in an amount. Make sure everything is where it needs to be. Save it and create check. And then in the checkbook screen, just print out checks your normal method. Installers. If it's it's not an installer. If it's a contractor, then your first steps in paying them, I should mention this also applies to sales commissions. Your first step is doing your job costing. By checking the box on a labor cost or a commission cost, it sends that dollar amount to a report file for that person. So here we have Joe, and under contract labor, here's all the invoice lines where his name was listed on the line, and we checked the box since the last time that we finalized a report. So you do your job costing. Remember, you don't do job costing until you have the installer's bill in your hand. and you've verified amounts and made corrections if you needed, and checked the box. You finalize the report, and you take that report total and you plug it in over here. And then create check. Same with commissions. Do the job costing. Typically you don't check the commission box yourself. That gets automatically clicked when the invoice is completed and paid in full. The software will check it off automatically. But you run the commission report, and then for that person you plug in their commission amount. If they get commission only, then I would just use this gross field here, this regular pay. If they're getting a salary plus a commission, I would probably use this as a salary and go and add in a commissions cost of goods sold account and add a new payroll item to pay them that commission. If they are commission only, I would still set up that commission account and then double click here and change this to the commission account. Just pointing out, mainly do the job costing first, run the commission report or the labor report, and then plug into the appropriate spot over here the amount that you're paying them from that report. Okay, good. So commission table, that's this box here. There's also, for installers, it's called level, same box, just slightly different function. You can have multiple commission tables. I've been doing some testing in here, obviously, but you can have so there's a base table, and you set it up. And you can have other tables. I don't know that I would put a person's name here. This is Joe's commission table because Joe might leave and go somewhere else. But you can rename these. But so you set up your commission tables, and then over here you can select this person when the commission gets calculated on the invoice should use which table. So when you've made that selection, the invoice calculates it accordingly. For installers, there's this level, 0 through 4, so 5 different levels in your labor types setup. Cost levels, 0 through 4. So this means that for this particular labor item, I could pay one or more installers this cost, or this cost, or this cost. So, you know, Joe, Chris and Joe get level 0. It was a Kevin gets level 1, things like that. So you would select which level, and then when you select that person's name on the labor line, it automatically changes the cost according to the table and what you have selected in the employee screen. It doesn't change the retail price at all. There's only one retail price setting in the setup window, but the cost will change because you're expecting to pay them more or less based on the table and the selection here. Okay. Employee installers. If, let's say that Chris Medina here is an employee installer, not a subcontractor. So I've installer here, employee, and we have a state. Now it didn't change these. By having those 3 earlier, it exempted all these. If we switch this to, say, some other state and switch it back to, no, it didn't do that because I didn't press enter. I've seen it do this before. Yeah, must be set. I thought it would change. Sorry. So we'll get it back to here. You'll have to double click and unexempt it so we can do the withholdings. Sorry, when you unexempt Social Security, it automatically unexempts Medicare. Earned income credit actually doesn't exist anymore, so there's no, it's always going to be 0. Yeah, it'll always be exempt. State withholding. Okay, and by the way, if your state doesn't have a state withholding, certain states are like that, it might say no here, but it'll be a 0 amount automatically. The software knows. You could, if you wanted, go in and exempt it. No problem. Okay, so an employee installer. So we unexempted it. Click on it, refresh it, keeps the retainer item there. May not have a retainer for an employee. I'm going to exempt that. Is there an hourly rate? How many hours did they report? So it's really like paying any other employee. To pay them. On the job costing side of things, what that does, let's thought I had more labor on here. So we're going to add labor. So we're going to put Chris and some labor and save that. When I right click the job cost, it's showing you here his hourly rate. And you could type in here how many hours did he report for doing that particular labor. And it'll change the cost. Okay, QFloors does not do any sort of load for payroll to kind of factor into this cost over here. The company's portion of Social Security and Medicare doesn't do anything like that. It's a lot of variables involved in some cases, and but it does not do that. I've seen some of our customers just put it in as use the flat rate as if they were a subcontractor and let it apply the cost that way. And you don't ever have to run the report or finalize the report for that installer because it's probably not going to be correct one way or the other. But just to get your job costing, to get a close estimate of your margin, and for paying commissions, if you're using margin-based commissions, you need that to be close. So over here, ultimately, this is where the payroll is calculated. How many hours did they report, and what are we going to pay them? Let's see. Anything else you can think of, Kevin, on that part? We still need to talk about non-installer 1099 pay and 1099s, and using a payroll service. Anything else you can think of? Okay, we're going to talk about these other 2 items, and then we might be finished here. No questions yet, obviously. Okay. Let's talk next about non-installer to someone who's not an installer, but we need to give them a 1099 come January 31st of next year. How do we pay them? I'm not going to go over today or not in this webinar how to do the 1099s and W-2s. There is another webinar out on our website where we've already covered that in detail, and there's an application note that documents and explains written how to do the W-2s and 1099s. We're not going to cover that here, but we have maybe an accountant or an attorney or some vendor of some sort that's providing service or doing something for us, and they're not incorporated, and we need to give them a 1099. One way to do it is you, of course, have them set up in your vendor accounts. And by the way, employees and installers do not get listed in here as vendors. Should have mentioned that early on, but you have your vendor listed out here. Let's set one up. We're going to click Add, and we're going to call it We'll do it right here. We'll say James. And that's our accountant or attorney or something, but not incorporated. We need to give them a 1099 address and so forth. And so we have our vendor, and we just do bills normally. That'd be cheap for an attorney, wouldn't it? And we'll save that. Save that. We go and print the check. Come sometime in January of 2014, we need to produce a 1099. There is a 1099 button down here. So we would need to select last year. I'm going to leave it at the year to date for that particular person. Guess I should go pay that so it shows correctly here. Sorry. Okay, so it's now a completed bill. So you'll need to go to your completed bills list for that particular person. Last year is what you'll put in here, and you'll see all the bills for that person. And you click 1099, and it runs through the process of printing the 1099. The drawback to this is in the vendor account setup, there's not a box yet. Somebody here, it's not a box here for their tax ID number, Social Security number. So that won't print out on the 1099. It is okay to print the 1099 and then handwrite on it their Social Security number or federal tax ID number. It's perfectly fine to do that. Yeah, it is a pain. We apologize. We don't have that working or doing that feature for you, but it'll work. An alternative is to set them up here in the employee subscreen. So we would have it would be like an installer, and you can list them as installer, or any one of these really, but I would list them as installer, contractor, pick a state, make sure they're exempted, and make sure you change this account to professional fees, legal fees, whatever it is that they bill you for. You may need to add other lines if they bill you for different things that you need to account for, and pay them that way. And then they will show up over here when you do the employee sub pay totals report and print 1099. So they'll just be in the list. Okay. Either way will work. You decide which one will work best for you. See, I just thought of another thing that we need to talk about in here is draws. You have an employee that takes an advance on his commissions, or an installer that takes an advance on his labor earnings. Employees taking an advance or purchases. I guess we should make it all that too, employee or installer purchases. So we've got three other scenarios to cover: draws, purchases, and using an outside payroll service. So a draw. It's really just a loan. The employee or installer is borrowing money. First, you set up your account. In your chart of accounts, this will be, and we'll say this is, I didn't click new. Let's copy that, click new, and we'll paste it and enter. And this is an asset because they owe it back to you. So let's modify this one here. Draw or loan, whatever you want to call it, it's not exempt anymore. The dollar amount is how much am I going to loan them right now, or if we've already loaned them the money, how much am I taking back? So we're going to cover both scenarios. First, let's talk about how to loan them the money. So I'm going to click OK. So at this point, and save our changes. Normal pay, week by week, are paychecks. Well, I'm not giving this person a paycheck right now, so we can delete that out. There's not a way to exempt the gross, so you have to delete that out. And you may need to exempt other items. And then if I'm loaning them some money, sorry, go back to the front of the line, negative. I'm in addition to pay. And OK. So there we've given them some money. It's a loan. Even if it's an advance on commissions, to me that's a loan. When I actually settle up and pay them commissions is when I'll do the withholdings from their pay. So I'm not going to check any of these boxes. If I check these boxes, it's making this taxable, and they'll get a net check. A little bit less than the $3,000. Okay, so we'd save, click create check, and then that'll show on their year-to-date check stub. But we've basically given them a check for $3,000 and we've loaned it. Now, when I'm paying them, let me sidetrack for just a moment. Another way that you could loan them the money is just come over here and click new and just create a bill. And go and pay them just like any other bill. You could do it that way as well to give them the loan. If you're going to deduct the loan payments, if they're not giving you a check month by month or whatever, then if you're deducting it from their pay, then over here, what's their pay amount for this week or for this month, and this draw item would be a positive amount to deduct it. I should have this posted to the draw account. Make sure everything else is set up correctly to get that deducted from the gross amount. It's not deducting before taxes, it's just taking it out after we've held out taxes. It's just a net check deduction. Same thing with installers, exact same setup. You could go and create a bill yourself just manually to loan them some money, or you could do a setup like this to pay them a loan and then use this week by week to deduct from the pay. Remember that the paycheck stub is year to date for that particular line. It's only going to show you what you have paid them minus what you've taken back from their pay during that current calendar year. If they take a loan out in November and then in December you hold some out of their pay, and then in January you hold some more out of their pay, the January paycheck stub is only going to show the amount you withheld that year. It's not going to show the total loan balance. That account, report, general ledger, I haven't put anything there, but This is how you would go see what's the balance in their account. I would always select the account name first and then put in my dates. And you would see payments and deductions posted in here and what's the account balance right now. You could always print that, export it to a spreadsheet, maybe print it, fold it up, put it in the envelope with their paycheck, however you do that. Okay, that's giving a draw. That's giving a loan. Purchases. Again, this is really the same way whether it's an installer or an employee. There should be an invoice. If they don't have a state exemption certificate, exempt from sales tax or whatever your state calls it, then there needs to be tax calculated. So you just write up your sale. Let's take an invoice here. So here's an employee and they bought some stuff from us, or it's an installer and they've purchased something from us, and we have this balance. Week by week, paycheck by paycheck, whatever your payroll system is, pay period, then when it's time to deduct something from their pay, sorry, need to back up. We need an account to put this to. This I'm just going to do more generic. I don't think you necessarily need the person's name on this one. This would be employee purchases. I have the invoice to account for whose purchase it is and what's the balance. It's a receivable. It's completed. They owe me the balance. So I'm just doing this generic employee purchases, and I'm going to call this also a current asset. Say again. Oh, Kevin caught me. I see the name is blank. I clicked new. I typed in a name. The name is blank until you press enter. You wonder how that happens to you, because that's how it happens, and I think we need a way to prevent that. But where you'll see happens to the best of us, and Kevin's the best, and it doesn't happen to him, but it happens to me. So the name gets blank. You'll see this, and that your name is blank on the account, but it's got a category, and you wonder how in the world that happens because you didn't press enter. Okay, so we've got an account. So when it's time to withhold some funds from this person's pay, let's job cost that. So over here you can see we've got receivables, including Mr. or Mrs. Employee. And when it's time to deduct something from their pay, you can put deducted something like that. Discount type. Remember, we're not doing check, cash, credit card. We talked about this earlier. We're posting, we want to decrease or increase the balance other than having check, cash, or credit card. What's the date? How much am I deducting from their pay this time? And we post it to that account. I think I put installer purchases. You'd have one for employee purchases. So either way, did I type one in there? I did, thanks. And add payment. So their invoice balance is now going to decrease. And then over here in the employee screen, for that employee, add, we have deduction, so it's a positive amount. Same account here as what we use on the invoice side. This should not affect taxes at all. So there we see one more deduction. Okay. Same thing with an installer. The process is the same. And you know, if you need to see how much that employee still owes you, it's simply just looking at the receivables. What's the balance on the invoice? Using a payroll service, an outside payroll service. If you are using an outside payroll service, you still need to have the payroll withholding tables installed. I say that on the assumption that you have contractor installers that you're paying yourself. If you're paying the installers through the payroll service as well, then it really doesn't matter if you have the payroll tables installed at all. Even though we are exempt from withholdings on these installers, then even though they're exempt here, the pay still runs through the payroll withholding tables to come up with a net. If you don't have the payroll tables installed, you'll get zeros, even though it's a contractor. All right, so using an outside payroll service, you'll report. You'll still need to run your do your job costing, run your reports here for commissions and so forth. Come up with certain amounts and report it to your payroll service, whatever method they require for that, of course. After they've done the payroll, you'll receive a report from them, either emailed or in the mail, and it's got 5 to 20 or 30 pages of reporting your payroll, and that can be a nightmare to try to read through that sometimes. But you basically have to account for it. You can't just leave it out of QFloors because some other company is doing the payroll. Your QFloors is your accounting system, not just a day-to-day management system. It needs to record on your balance sheet and your profit and loss all the transactions that happened relative to that pay period. So you've got to create a bill. Now I'm going to dummy this down. I'll talk about different issues that we've seen come up as we go along here, but I'm going to kind of dummy it down to some extent. Ultimately, if you are using an outside payroll service, you probably want to schedule an appointment with us so we can talk with you about the how your payroll service, how that company does your payroll, what services are they providing. Are they making the payments to the government entities for the withholdings and so forth? Are they paying the workers' compensation or unemployment every 6 months or year or monthly or whatever it takes for those things? Are they sending to the federal government the Social Security, Medicare, and federal withholding? Are they sending to the state withholding, things like that? So call us, set up an appointment, and we'll probably need you to send fax or email over a copy of your payroll report. We'll definitely need that. If you want, you can make a photocopy of it yourself, black out any Social Security numbers that you don't want to send over, then fax it over or scan it and email it. Okay, payroll service. You create a bill. Paychecks, ADP, maybe it's your accountant. And what was the payroll date? The pay period. And then you have these accounts. And in here you need to itemize the gross pay, the gross earnings. So if somebody normally gets paid $2,000 on their particular paycheck for that week or month or whatever, and then you have taxes coming out and whatever else coming out, then you don't put in here the net. You've got to tell it the gross, that $2,000. Everybody's added together. So you might have some amount here that's large. Now you can break that apart. You might have salaries and wages, a few different accounts, one for office staff, one for owners and management, things like that. However you decide to break down your accounting, whatever type of detail you want to see. And you can do that in QFloors as well. You can have maybe Ryan is one of your managers, and so you can have his pay posting to a different account if you want. So back to this, salaries and wages and other accounts to report the gross earnings. Then another line here to account for the company portion of of payroll taxes, the company's portion of Social Security and Medicare. You don't need to itemize the employee's share of Social Security and Medicare. You don't need to report here the employee's amounts of federal withholding, state withholding, things like that, because those are included in the gross. So this is just the company's portion, Social Security and Medicare, and we'll put some amount here. You would need to account for the payroll service fee if that's on the payroll report. Sometimes they do that separately, I've seen. You can put it back in that same account. If it were me, being a little bit maybe overly detailed for some people's preferences, maybe you set up a separate account for payroll service fees, something like that. So you put it to some account. And that's the basics of it. Anything else you would add, Kevin? Yeah, that's the basics of it. That's the money that went out. There, as I mentioned, there may be things that are different on yours. If there's IRA accounts, if there are loans and garnishments, things like that, that you might have to do other things with. So that's where we'd have to have an hour or two with you on the phone with a copy of your report in our hands to look at it. We would want that copy before the appointment so we could look it over some with and ask any questions we may need to. So you save the bill. Now we need to save a payment, right? You're used to doing bills, and you save a payment that's separate from the bill. And this can be a little different depending on how your payroll service company actually deducts the money from your checking account. Do they send a check to each employee and each check clears your bank account separately, or does the payroll service just make one big deduction out of your account and they send out checks and things like that? So there's just different ways of the payments coming out of your account. If basically if you are going to see each separate check clearing your bank account, then you want to set up separate payments. So here you can do a name here. This is Ryan Malone, and his was 18 some amount. I should probably have put it down here, sorry. Cut and paste because I'm lazy, and save that payment, and then click new and do one for Christy and another one for Alex, and just separate payment for each net check, not the gross check, but the net check that's going to clear your bank account. Again, if it's all lumped together and your payroll service takes it all out wholesale, then you'll have one amount. Now you might see also, and you'd have to talk with your payroll service and find that out. Are they taking one amount out for the paychecks wholesale, or maybe individual checks, and then another amount is going to come out separately for the taxes, and that would probably include the taxes that the business owes, the company's portion of the taxes all together. Periodically, you might see a deduction come out of your bank account, and it'll show on the payroll report that they paid your unemployment expense. And that's not typically something that's done monthly or even quarterly in some cases. So it takes a lot of really knowing and understanding your payroll. So you set up the multiple payments, and then over in the checkbook screen, you just go and pay those either with check numbers, because you're going to see check numbers deducted one by one, or do the non-check item. I'm not going to cover how to do the checkbook screen. That's done in other webinars. So that's payroll service overview. Still no questions, comments? Boy, I really expected to have a flood of questions during this. Okay. Yeah, either the question and hand raising is broken, Kevin said, or we've put you to sleep. That's probably it. I put you to sleep. Sorry about that, everyone. But we are glad you're here. We've got a question. All right. Who's Crystal? Can you hear us? Or are you going to type a question?
I can hear you.
Hi,
I just
Crystal.
have. I'm in California, and we have UI, which we only pay up to the first $7,000 per year. Is there any way in QFloors to do that? Because I've always done it manually, and it became a pain in the butt to do, so we actually outsourced our payroll. But I would really like to bring payroll back in if there's a way to do that.
Okay. Thanks for asking that. UI means unemployment insurance, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so QFloors does not do any unemployment insurance calculations. I'm sorry for that. We have talked about it. It would have to run through the payroll withholding tables, and we just have not we have not looked into it deeply enough to start implementing it. It would be some fairly major changes here. Not that we can't do it, not that we won't. It's just right now we don't. So I'm sorry for that.
Okay.
The payroll reports can help you, this employee sub-pay totals report. I would run this pay period by pay period. I just remembered one other thing I need to show about payroll is doing the report. And but this report can help you get the numbers that you need for unemployment insurance. But we don't have any place for you to store employee by employee the different unemployment categories and things, right? Is this a warehouse staff, office staff? What's the risk level of that employee?
Okay.
So sorry for that. We don't do the I think that's a 940 for the federal, and we don't do any state unemployment either. So
yeah. Okay.
Thank you for asking. I should have pointed that out earlier. I'm really glad you asked.
No, thank you.
Okay. And I completely forgot. I do need to show you how to use this report. I'm going to put in some really broad date ranges here. And so you run your report for the pay period, and there's your salary. These are the general ledger accounts: salaries and wages, federal, Social Security, employees portion of Social Security. I'm sorry, employer, employee, employer, employee, employer. You have your state withholding. Any account used in the payroll is going to show up in here. Okay. This is based, and the dates are based on the pay date, the payroll bill. So this this date here, when you click Create Check, it creates a bill in the background with that date. You could date the paycheck any date after that. This report is going off the bill date. Just pointing that out. So I would print this out and store it with the check stubs or whatever for that pay period. And then to pay, if you're doing your own payroll, you would take these totals, those 5 federal, the 2 FICAs, the 2 Medicares, and you would create a bill with 5 lines on the bills, each one with those amounts. And that's paying your federal payroll withholdings. Then you'd have another bill at some point with the state items. And I know California, Pennsylvania have different items. You see there's a state withholding and there's a state disability insurance for California. Those I think need to be paid separately. I'm not 100% sure on that. But you might have to create one bill at one point for the state, another bill later for the SDI, whatever it requires for you to pay those withholdings. Child support deductions, things like that. Here you have withheld from the employee's pay for some garnishment or that, but then later you've got to make sure you create a bill to the state agency that goes to and use that same account to pay them. IRA deductions and so forth. You've withheld from their pay. When it comes time to record that the IRA, that financial company is either deducted directly from your checking account, or if you have to mail them a check, you've got to create a bill to record paying that. Here you just, the IRA deduction will just show you withheld some from the employee's pay. Another question here.
General reporting. Employees given access, can they do just theirs, or do they see everyone's? It's everyone's, isn't it?
The question is, in the general report, if given access to that, can they view just theirs, or can they view everyone? So let's go look at, so general reporting, you'd be able to see everyone. So this general reporting access, right, is not something that everyone would have. This would be managers being able to once you've done your job costing, to create the contract labor report that says how much to pay each installer, to create the sales commission reports that shows how much to pay each salesperson in total commissions, and to finalize the sales tax reports for the previous month. So this is not an employee by employee report area. Does that answer the question, or did I miss the mark on what you asked? If you could, who was that wrote? Mitzi, if you don't mind maybe typing a little something more to let us know we hit it on the nail on the head, or did we miss it? Okay, she said that does answer her question. Thanks for asking that. Printing 941. This is you have to select employees, print to 941, select your printer. Okay. And I'm going to have things off because I use this for testing, and I've got different years selected and things, and so it's going to report things that are off. But the 941 report that we print is just a sheet that shows here's the amount to write in on line 2 or 3, and here's the amount to write into line 4. Things like that. Right now, for one, we don't print the form itself like other software programs do. Really nice feature, of course, but we don't do that just yet. So, and another thing is the 941, some of our reports, like the W-2s and 1099s, the IRS has those standardized. You can go down to the office supply store, buy a package of W-2s and stick those in the printer, and those are standardized. Whatever company brand name has Staples or whatever has their own, they have to have it laid out exactly the same way as anyone else's. They've got to be a particular format, laid out in the exact right spots to print into. The 941 report, the IRS has not standardized that, so we don't print onto that form. So we give you a sheet that shows here's the numbers, and you handwrite them into your form. Oh yeah, Kevin's pointing out there are some online things that you can do, and some maybe other software, but little dummy down software. Yeah. Yeah, the online, the website for the IRS, the EFTPS and different things, you can just type it in, and but you'd probably have to run that to have the numbers to type in. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense on paying your withholdings. You run this report for the pay period, then in the bill screen, you'll have a bill, U.S. Treasury, and then you'll have federal withholding and the amount on that line that came from the report, and you'll have Social Security, FICA. Did I rename one of those? I think I did. Yeah, shouldn't have done that, but and the amount and the employer's side of it, and do the same for Medicare. So that's how you do those bills to pay those withholdings. Any other questions or comments? We can wait for a moment if you need to gather your thoughts or anything. We'll wait to see if anybody has any more questions. Looks like we're good. As always, we're so thankful for each of you using QFloors, giving us your criticisms, your compliments, your input. We appreciate each of you, and for just being here in this today and listening and asking questions. Mitzi has another question. Oh, Mitzi says, thanks for the webinar. Thank you, Mitzi, and everyone else. Thank you very much. And again, this will be put out on the website, hopefully later today, and you can go back and review it. Have a good afternoon. Oh, sorry, we did have another question. When the year is over and the retainer was not used, do we just create a check at the end of the year to pay that to them? That's a great question. I think most retainers, you're just going to hold on to it until they stop installing for you. Remember that the paycheck stub is not going to show an account total that you've withheld from them in total, but the general ledger report will show you that. So you kind of have to watch that as you're doing that deduction to make sure that you've held out a certain amount. And there may be legal things you've got to look into, having them sign an agreement. I don't know. Just look into things that yourself to know that what you need to do legally to do a retainer system. But once they have left your service or they're not installing for you anymore, then yes, that's when you go and create a bill and select that retainer account and pay them the balance of that account. Maybe part of your agreement with them is, I'm going to hold on to this for a year after you've left our services. You're not installing for us anymore, 6 months or something, for any problems that surface. But you'll work that out with them. Any other questions? Anything else? That was a great question, by the way, Crystal. Okay, we are going to sign off. Thanks again for being here today, and we'll be talking with you. Bye-bye.